Okay, so I thought I would do some more movie reviews this week, and I actually got a request to do a review for Paranormal Activity 3. Well, I did rent that movie, and I actually saw all the Paranormal Activities in the theater, but I thought, it's been a while since I've seen them, so I'm just going to go ahead and review the entire series of movies and just give my thoughts on them, give a rundown of what happens in the movies, and I'll just do 1, 2, and 3, and I hope you guys like it. The first Paranormal Activity I was really pumped up about. I really wanted to go see this movie. Um, I went and saw it at the theater, and when I left, I was like, what the hell was that? This movie sucked. But it wasn't till later, when I got home and I'm by myself, that I realized just how scary this movie is. Like, it scared the crap out of me. The movie doesn't really kick in until you're alone and you start to think about it again. So it definitely does have some really creepy moments in that movie. Um, I saw all the Paranormal Activities in the theater. I guess they're kind of the new Saw series where they release one every year at Halloween because they always make so much money. But the first movie was kind of a risk. It came out in 2007, but it didn't come out to all the theaters until 2009. So the first movie, it takes place in 2006 in San Diego, California. And it opens up and it's kind of a found footage movie where they act like it's all real and it's true and this really happened. And it says that the Paramount Pictures would like to thank the families and the San Diego Police Department for being able to use this footage. Um, you have the two main characters who are Mika and Katie. And he gets a camera and he wants to see what's been going on with Katie, and she thinks she's being haunted. She says she's been haunted since she was 8 years old. And he wants her to encourage the ghost because he's got this camera and he wants to capture some activity on film. So he wants her to kind of antagonize it and get it riled up. And this guy is so annoying. If you've watched this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He is so stupid that it almost ruins the movie. I mean, all he does is like the exact opposite of what you should do. It was just ridiculous. But anyway, Mika sets up a tripod in their bedroom. Um, he wants her to, antagonize the ghost, but she's not comfortable doing that, obviously. And he sets it up and it kind of watches them while they sleep at night. He wants to try and pick up on any activity that goes on. So the first night you hear some noises, but not much really happens. Um, in the morning, Katie finds her keys in the floor. She has a psychic come over to talk to her. Mika doesn't take any of it seriously. He's cracking bad jokes the whole time. And Katie tells him that her and her sister, she's talking to the psychic, and she tells him that her and her sister experienced paranormal activity when they were around 8 years old. They would experience breathing and shadowy figures, but her home actually burned down when she was a kid, and they couldn't figure out why. And this was a recent thing, and it started happening again. It kind of would go off and on throughout her life, but it recently started happening again. And she says she hears stuff like people calling her name, whispering, scratching on the walls. And Mika wants to increase this activity, and the psychic says they feed off of negative energy. And he goes through their house, and um, he says, I'm more experienced with ghosts, and I think what you have is a demon, and this is way out of my league. He starts to act like he's really scared. He gives him the name of a demonologist who can help them way more than he can. Um, this dumbass Mika wants to get a Ouija board, and the psychic says that's opening a door, and he wants to get the Ouija board so he can ask the ghost that he thinks is a ghost what it wants, and he says that's opening the door, and what it wants is Katie. So The third night, around 2 in the morning, we we see the door kind of move back and forth, and most of the paranormal activity happens around like 1 to 4 in the morning, somewhere around that time in this movie. And so the third night, we just kind of see the door move back and forth. Mika starts to rile the ghost up again the next day, and he's yelling at it, asking it what it's doing. Um, he tries to do some research on demons and other stuff like that. And Katie she's terrified at this point because she's experienced this before, and she says that, Mika, if it gets dangerous, can we please get rid of the cameras? And he says we should talk about this because I should have some say, seeing as you didn't tell me this would happen once we moved in together. And so she feels bad, like something she can't control, she feels bad about, that it's affecting him, but he's enjoying it. Like, he wants to catch all this shit on tape. So, night 5, Katie wakes up. And she has this horrible nightmare, and she wakes up and she's screaming. And then they hear a really loud bang, and Mika goes downstairs to investigate it. And that's really it. You just kind of hear a banging. Over the course of the movie, the ghost gets strong, or the demon gets stronger and starts to cause more paranormal stuff to happen to him. And Katie's friend comes over the next day, and Mika shows her some audio he recorded in the room, and it sounds like grunting. So Mika asks Katie to get a Ouija board. And Katie's like, no, we're not getting a Ouija board. We're not bringing a Ouija board into this house. And I want you to make me a promise right now that you are not going to get a Ouija board. So he promises he's not going to go buy a Ouija board. And they go to bed. They're getting ready to go to bed on night 13. And he's antagonizing the ghost, the demon. He's antagonizing it, telling it to, come do something and all this other crap. And so night 13, they hear a really loud bang. They run downstairs. They see the chandeliers kind of swinging back and forth on its own, and just they're starting to get freaked out. So Mika starts to try and communicate with the demon in the bedroom. He's got a microphone and he's asking it stupid questions. And he goes back and listens to the audio and he hears some grunts and growls. On night 15, Katie sits up, and she just stares at Mika while he's sleeping for about 2 hours, and then she walks out of the room. He gets up and he finds her sitting outside. He's going through the house and he finally finds her outside, and she's kind of acting strange and not herself. So he says, I'm going to go inside and get you some blankets and I'll come back out here with you. So he goes inside and Mika hears a really loud bang and the TV cuts on and it's playing static. And then he turns around and Katie's there, and she doesn't remember any of this. She says, what's going on? So she was possessed, I guess, for a little bit. And she doesn't remember any of this happening. The next day, he shows her the footage and asks her, do you really not remember any of this? And she says, no, I don't remember anything. So he thinks maybe she was sleepwalking. He tells her he doesn't want her to get an exorcist because it could make things worse. So his genius idea is to go get a Ouija board. And of course Katie goes crazy. She asked him not to. He promised he wouldn't. He tries to get her on a technicality and say he promised he wouldn't buy one, but he borrowed it, and it's really retarded. And then the two of them leave, and there's a camera on the Ouija board, and while they're gone, it starts to move on its own and then burst into flames. They come home and they find it, but Katie's really mad. She doesn't want to talk to him. They finally get back together, and she makes him make another promise. And Mika stands in front of the camera and he says, I promise I'm not going to betray you again, and I'm not going to try and piss the demon off. So he's trying to figure out what it says on the Ouija board. There's some kind of message burned into it. Katie's friend comes back over and says, you can come stay with me, but she explains that that won't change anything because the demon's just going to follow me wherever I go. So she tells Mika that he can try his plan. He says he's got this plan to fix everything, and he can try it. But if it doesn't work, they're going to call the demonologist. His brilliant plan is to lay down baby powder so that when the demon comes back, they can see the footsteps. That doesn't make any sense at all. But night 17, they laid down this powder, and they wake up, they hear some noises, and they see that there are footprints leading into the room but not out of the room. So they start to freak out. The footprints they look like three-toed feet, kind of like a chicken. And they start to follow the prints where they came from, and it leads them to the attic, which has been kind of pushed open. So Mika gets a ladder, and he climbs up into the attic, and he sees this weird picture. He gets it, and it's a picture of Katie as a child, but the ends of the picture are kind of burned. So it was from her house when it burned down, which means there's no possible way it could be up there in their attic. So that was pretty creepy. The next day, he actually tries to convince her again not to call the demonologist. Even though the footprints were there. I mean, it's just beyond stupid. It was almost infuriating at this point how stupid this guy is. But Katie doesn't care. She tries to call him anyways, but he's out of town, so she calls the psychic back. Night 18, the demon runs up the stairs and slams the door. Mika goes out in the hallway and challenges it and says, "Oh, you wanna fuck with us?" and all this other stuff. In the morning, they're eating breakfast and they hear some breaking glass. So they run upstairs and they see a photo of Katie and Mika together. And the part with Mika's face looks like it's been punched in and then scratched. So he's definitely pissing the thing off. The psychic comes over and he immediately senses that this thing has been getting stronger. He senses the demon. He says he has to get out of here now because it's mad that he's here, and him being here is only going to make it worse. There's nothing he can do to help him. And he says the demonologist will be back in town in a few days, and he will come help you guys out. Night 19, we see the covers moving and lights in the hallway going on and off. And then we start to see a shadow move over the door. The next morning, Mika is doing some research online, and he finds a woman who had all the same stuff happen to her that happened to Katie as a child. The house burned down. She was haunted by the same shadowy figure, but she lived in the 60s. And he shows her that once they tried to get an exorcist, things got a lot worse for the girl. So him and Katie start an argument, and they start fighting, which, is negative energy, so the thing's only going to get stronger. And night 20, we see a shadow move across the door. It's much clearer this time. And Katie actually gets pulled out of bed and dragged down the hall. This part was scary as hell. She gets pulled out of the bed. The door slams. She's dragged down the hall. She's screaming bloody murder here. Just screaming her head off. Mika gets up, runs, chases after her. And that's all we see. I mean, they're holding each other and they're just frightened to death. The next day, Katie has kind of a bite-looking mark on her leg, or her stomach, and she starts acting really weird at this point. She's holding a crucifix and squeezing it so hard her hands are bleeding. Mika gets mad and he takes the crucifix, and he's getting really frustrated and stressed out at this point, even though he's the one who caused all this. And he burns the crucifix for whatever reason that's going to do. I mean, I don't know what help that's going to cause, but then he goes to talk to Katie, and they have a plan to leave, But now Katie's acting really weird and she's laying in bed and she says, I don't want to leave. I think it will be okay now. And then her voice gets really weird, like when she says that, kind of like a deeper voice, like she's possessed. And then she just smiles, like really sinister. So, night 21, Katie sits up and she stares at Mika. And the covers slowly fall off of him, and she goes and stands over him like she did before, where she just stares at him for a couple hours. And then she leaves the room, and you hear her screaming, like screaming her lungs off, and she's screaming for Mika, and he runs downstairs, and then all we see is Katie come back into the bedroom. She's got blood on her, and she just throws Mika into the camera. And it's basically the clip we all saw in the trailer before Paranormal Activity came out to the theaters. So that was the money shot of the movie, really. And she throws him into the camera, then she smiles at the camera, and then she kind of attacks the camera. And they show a message across the screen saying his body was found, but her whereabouts are still unknown. So it was a Paranormal Activity 1. I think just the creepiness of it all, it's probably the scariest of all three movies. It helped that there wasn't really anything else like it. I know there's movies like Blair Witch and stuff, but as far as just in a house with like a haunting and all the stuff that happened, they made it look real with the camcorder. I have to say that I think Paranormal Activity 1 is the scariest of all the movies. And I know they kind of build on the original story with the later movies, but I thought the first one was well done. It was original. I've seen a ton of horror movies, so it's always refreshing to see somebody try something new. And I thought it was different. I thought it was a pretty good movie. So when I left the theater, I didn't like it, but thinking about it now, I've seen it a couple times, and I really do like it now. I think it's good, and I think that when you think about it later, it really starts to scare you, and it kind of stays with you for a while. So that's a sign of a good horror movie to me. So I hope you guys like this review, and I'll be back doing Paranormal Activity 2 and 3. So subscribe to my channel, like the videos, leave some comments. If you have any horror movies or series or any movie at all that you would like me to do a review of, leave me a comment, let me know, and I will try my best to find the movie. So thanks for listening. Bye.